Hi, thank you for coming back to my channel. I'm going to teach you C# in less than a day. This is video 2. In video 2, I'm going to teach you about the if expression and the else if and else expression. You're also going to learn about the parse on how to convert or how to make the IDE treat a piece of data like another piece of data and actually encapsulate that form of data into another form of data so it can be processed. So my name is Michael Clare, and let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Visual Studio 2022. The first part one, that video was 3 hours long. I'm going to try to make this video much shorter. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new project. You do the same thing because in the first video you would have installed Visual Studio 2022 community version or the paid version, depending on what your status is. If you're a student or if you self-employed or you're just learning like me, I learned by myself. I'm a self-learner. Um, I had to download the community version because it was free and it was very useful for a person who cannot afford that financially at this time. The good thing about programming is you do not need any physical stuff in order to build something that's worth possibly even billions. You can start from nothing. All you need is a laptop or a desktop computer, an operating system on it, and to download an IDE of your choice. Me, I like to work with Visual Studio 2022. I started off with 2017 and I've been programming ever since. Okay, so I'm just going to wait for that to start up. If statements are very important. What if statements do is they give your program the ability to make choices depending on the data that it receives or the data that it does not receive. It gives your program the ability to choose which path or direction that the software is going to go in. Okay, so we're going to create a console program and we're going to name it if. I'm going to name it if statement. I will be using the framework .NET 5 instead of the newer version, which is .NET 6, or the older one, which is .NET Core 3.0, 3.1. Okay. This program will work on C#, Windows, Linux, Mac, Windows, console. The program that we're building could run on each one of these different platforms, C#. Once again, my name is Michael Elijah Muhammad Clare. I'm a software developer in the Bahamas. I've been programming with C# for about 5 months, um, but I have been programming with Java before C#. I programmed with Java for about a year, and I programmed with Visual Basics or VB.NET for a year also before I programmed with Java. I also programmed with Python for about 3 months. But C Sharp right now is my favorite programming language. And I also programmed with C++, and that was a long time ago though. Okay, let's get started. I'm gonna delete this, or I could just comment it out. Okay, just comment it out. In order to comment something out with a comment, on the first video, I told you what a comment does. These 2 forward slashes, what it does is it tells the IDE to ignore anything that comes after these 2 slashes, forward slashes. But when you get to the next line, then the compiler will begin to read whatever is next. Okay, so I commented that out, and what I'm going to do, because we're using a console program, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to call a namespace static, and we're going to call the system console. What that does is it allows me to use the methods, a couple of methods inside of the console class, without having to fully qualify the name for the method in order to use it. Fully qualify the class in order to use the method within the class. So if I didn't put this here, and comment it out, the 2 slashes, and I tried to use console without the console in it, and I tried to use write line, I couldn't do it because I would need to fully qualify the class in order to use the method in the class. So I would have to put console back in order to use that method within the console class. But if I add this namespace up here for the console class, I no longer need to fully qualify this method inside of the console class. So I could just delete that out of there, and I could still use the method inside of that class. So that's why I use this namespace up here, which is the console namespace that's inside the system class. Okay, so I'm going to comment that back out, and I'm going to go to the next line. Well, I think I should remove that because I don't want to confuse you guys. So I'm going to just remove it. Okay, first thing I'm going to do before I create my if expression, I'm going to create a couple of variables so that data can be held in those areas. So I'm going to create an integer, and on the first video, remember what integers were. Integers were numbers that have no decimal points. They can be negative numbers as well as positive numbers without a decimal point. So in a sense, they're whole numbers. Okay, so I'm going to say int, and then remember you have to name your variables. So I'm going to name this variable num1, and I'm going to say num1 equals 1 instead of 0. We're going to give it 1. In programming, 0 is a value. Okay, just to let you know. Okay, so IntelliSense knows that I want to create another possible num2, and so it gave me a suggestion, and it picked num2 instead of me having to do all that. I just click on tab, and it fills in what the guess that it made. Okay, so now IntelliSense believes that I want a num3, but in this case I do not want an integer, nor do I want to name my next variable num3. and say it equals 3. So IntelliSense is filling me out on what I want to do, but not always will IntelliSense be guessed correctly, because I do not want to create another integer, and I do not want to name the next variable num3 and give it a value of 3. Instead, I want to create a string now. Oh, I do want a num3. There I go. Yes, I do want a num3. Um, I wrote down how I'm going to code this on a piece of paper, and I didn't see that I am going to use a num3. But now I looked up at my paper I wrote, and yes, I do want a num3. So I wrote out some pseudocode, which is it's a way of writing out the program on paper or whatever you write it on, so you could have an idea on what the program would look like and what it's supposed to do, what you expect it to do. So I will take a num3 from IntelliSense. But the next one, I'm not going to take this console write line, num1. I'm not going to take that because that's the wrong guess. I want to create a string. So in order to create a string, we use the keyword string space, and I'll take the default name, which is str, and we'll say that string equals an empty string. Okay, empty string. Empty string is a way to put a value inside of a variable without leaving it actually empty. Now, I could use this empty string, or I could have just went on ahead and did that. And that's just as good to the IDE and to C sharp. C sharp say that's an empty string also. So I really didn't have to write out empty string, but I was just showing you as a placeholder how you can write the word actually empty string. Okay, so I'm going to leave that right there. Next, I'm going to create another variable. Am I going to create another variable? Yes, I'm going to create another variable called, and it's going to be a string also. We're going to say it is, the name of this variable is going to be answer, because we're going to create a program. Oh, I spelled that wrong. We're going to create a program that asks the user a question. And so we're going to leave that actually without a value. Okay, but remember, we're not going to be able to actually use it until the user puts a value in it. Okay, so we're going to name it answer, string answer. Remember, a string is a group of characters, and it has to be together. It can't be any space in between when you're creating a string. So it has to be together. So I could create a string, for instance, and I can call it K, this, that, and the next. And that's totally fine with C sharp. But what I can't do is say, make a string look like this. C sharp wouldn't take it because it's starting with a number. Okay, so C sharp don't take that. It has to start with a letter, and it cannot start with an empty space either. Okay, so the next, I like my code to look more readable, so that's why I use so much space. Forgive me if it's irritating. So I'm going to use inside of the system, the console class, I'm going to use a method called write. There, go right there. And what this method does is it allows me to write something to the display when we run this program. So I'm going to say write, and what we're going to write is which number is greater, 1 or 2. So we're going to ask the user, which number is greater, 1 or 2? We're going to put some space there, so whenever it pops up on the screen, we have space. Okay? Now, we're going to need some place so that the user, when the user does put the input into the keyboard saying which number is greater, answering the question, it's going to have to be stored somewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our variables that we created, and that variable we're going to take is answer, which was a string, which is a string. So we're going to say answer equals read line. Oh, we could have went with what IntelliSense said. We could have go with that and say right there instead of me typing it out. So that's even better. It saves a lot of time, IntelliSense sometimes, and sometimes IntelliSense don't guess correctly. Okay, so now that we have a place to store the answer to this question on which one is greater, we're going to store it inside answer. Okay, so now that that's there, we're going to say int, we're going to create another variable. We're going to say int answer, and we're going to say answer 2. Answer 2, int answer 2. We're not going to give it a value at first. And so we're going to say answer 2 equals. Now remember I was telling you about converting or encapsulating a data type into another data type. This is what I'm doing right now. And that's why I have the int parse, and we're parsing the variable answer. And we're taking that encapsulated data, and we're going to put it inside this integer. Now remember, these two are different data types. This answer, when you look up here, it's a string. And over here, when I created answer 2, remember answer 2 is an integer. See? Int answer. Now I cannot just put the data of a different data type into another data type without encapsulating it or either converting it. In this case, I'm encapsulating it. I'm not actually changing the data, but I'm making the IDE see the data and handle the data in a different way that it normally would. So I'm making this string look like an integer and be handled like an integer when the data is processed or being processed. Okay? I hope that wasn't too confusing to understand. So that's what the int dot parse means. And anything I put in here, it's going to be treated like an integer. And then it's going to go inside of here. Okay? And another thing to remember, in C Sharp, in most programming language I've seen, anything on the left side and anything on the right side is going into the left side. If you see this equal sign, if you see this equal sign, that means anything on the left, if there's a variable on the left, most of the times it's being put inside of whatever is on the left, whatever variable is on the left. And because this variable is on the left and I have an equal sign and there's a variable here, that means that I'm putting the value that's here on the right into the value of this variable, which will be anything that I put inside of this answer string. Okay, so we'll go to the next line now that I have that there, and we're going to begin with our if expression. So I'm going to use IntelliSense so I can speed it up a little. Oops. And I'm going to say if answer 2 equals num2, then we want answer. Oops, it's already there. What am I doing? Wasn't looking at the screen. Okay, I forgot I used quick fill in with IntelliSense. Okay, so now I'm going to say right line. I'm going to say right line, and we're gonna make it more legible. So we're gonna use these line breaks in order to make space in the printout when the program runs. Okay, scroll up some. I hope you're following along because it makes it easier when you actually dig in and start doing the coding yourself and following along. You know, they say practice makes perfect. And if you're practicing whilst you're learning, that gives you the hands-on that you're going to need in order to do this on your own when you're no longer watching a video or reading a book like I did. That's how I learned to program. I actually, instead of looking at videos, I was reading a book because I've always been a book person. Videos, I have nothing against videos. That's why I'm creating a video for you now. But I like books more because books are more intimate, meaning that I, I can I can actually take my time and get the details like only a book can give you. Now this video, I'm giving you the details because I learned from the book way. So that's why I can give you the details. But anybody, in my opinion, that's teaching on a video on how to program or how to do anything, if they didn't get it from a book, I think it would be more difficult for them to be able to squeeze in the tiny, minute details about a subject because books give you the details, the little tiny, minute pieces of information that can be very, very, very valuable later when you're trying to replicate what you have learned. Okay, so now that we have the if expression, so we said if answer 2 equals num2, which the value of num2 is the number 2, then I want you to make a new line and I want you to say you are correct. So let's go ahead and test this out before we go any further and run the program. Remember when I click up here, that's telling the IDE to build the program and run it. Okay, I'm waiting for something to happen. My computer is loaded with viruses. Forgive me. I download a lot of foolishness on my laptop, especially movies. I know I shouldn't, but I do anyway. Okay, there we have the computer now asking us which number is greater, 1 or 2. So right now, the computer program that we built, it doesn't have the intelligence to know what to do if I pick the number 1, but it does have the intelligence to know what to do if I pick the number 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the number 2 and I should get a response from the program that we're creating. So I say 2 is greater. And there you have it. You are correct. So the, the program has a piece of intelligence using the if statement. Okay, now let's run that program again and see what happens if we pick the number 1. Nothing happens. The program just waits and nothing happens. Okay, so we're going to give the program some more intelligence, and we're going to use else if statements. So else if, okay, yeah, that is it. That's what we want. You see, IntelliSense guessed exactly what we wanted, but instead of this equal equal, we want greater than, and then we want equal. So right now we're saying if else answer 2 is greater than or equal to 3, num3, which is the number 3, then I want you to do this inside of this block. This is called a block. In the first video, I told you guys that these squiggly brackets um, hold together. It's like a wall. Nothing outside of the wall is looked at when this program runs except that which is inside of the wall. Okay? So this wall holds our code for the else ifs expression. So we're going to say else if right line. We're going to do another right line so we can space out our output. So I'm just doing a copy and paste here so I wouldn't have to type things in all the time. Oh, what did I do? Okay, I'm not a fast typer, so I usually do use the tab to fill in the blanks. If you want me to type, you will get so upset with me because I type very, very slow. And I think the reason I type slow because I'm always paying attention in the moment. So that causes me to type very, very slow, I notice. Okay, so we're gonna write your number is too high. Okay. Okay, and the reason why we're gonna have a response with your number is too high, because remember, num3 is higher than the two numbers we're discussing, which is num1 and num2. If they type in num2 or greater than num2, then we're gonna say your answer is too high. Okay, so now we're gonna run that. Okay, and now we're here again. So what if I put in the answer 15? Your number is too high. So now the computer have the intelligence to know if the number is not 2, which is the answer, or the number is too high, is higher than 2. And so we get the response, which is your number is too high. Okay, so if all else isn't answered correctly, we want the computer to say, hey, you didn't get it right. Okay, so that's where now we can add more else if statements. We can add 100 of them. There's no number to else if statements we can add. Okay, so we're just gonna leave that right there, because if you have to add more else if statements, you might as well just go ahead and use a switch statement. Not a switch statement, but a switch expression. Okay, so we're gonna use else, and we're gonna say else. Oops, sorry about that. That don't belong there. We're gonna say else, right line, and we're gonna make some space here like we did before with the line break, and we're gonna do 2 line breaks and go to the next line. And we're going to also do, we're going to put here wrong answer, pal. And we're going to do 2 line breaks and we're going to say try again. Okay? I'm using an external keyboard, not my laptop keyboard, because my laptop keyboard does not work anymore because I have some ferocious viruses in which I do not want to take a whole day in trying to figure out how to get rid of them. So I continue to use an external keyboard, but sometimes I type a key that is not what I want to see. So we use the new line breaks. And we're going to make some space so everything lines up beautifully. And at the end, we're going to do another right line. And then, let me move this up. After we do that, we're going to hold the program. So we're going to say read key. Read key is a method also inside of the console class that holds the program from closing. Oh wow. Okay. I was outside of the method. So, okay, there we go. Now we're going to run the program and see what happens when we pick 1 as being higher than the number 2. Okay, so which number is greater, 1 or 2? We're going to pick 1 and then we get wrong answer, pal. And you no longer see all of the writing that you saw before. The screen is actually clear now. And we can open the screen up to full and you can see that you have a full featured program. But if we press enter again, then the program give you all of the useful googly gunk on your screen. And press enter again, the program closes. So I want you to look at this program and I want you to mimic the code in this program and change around the values inside of these variables and change around the response and the questions to your own. Go ahead and be creative and create your own scenario about which number to use and what the response and how the question is going to go. And just build a few of these projects until you get comfortable with it. And then we'll go to the next program, which will be the switch expression we'll learn next. That's also a way for your program to make a choice. Just like the if, else, and else, the switch expression also is very similar to the if and the else if and else expressions. So we're going to end this video, but before I end the video, I'm going to just put the code, I'm going to copy the code to Notepad. So just in case you didn't see it very well, you'll be able to see it very well now and be able to copy it. Okay, so this is code. I'm going to scroll down in 10 seconds maybe more seconds than that or less, so that you can get everything. And remember, these are blocks. And what blocks do is hold the code so that it won't leak out of the local block. So pause the video and make sure that you write all its code down. You're not going to have to use this 2 times, this using system, because the ID is going to automatically put this piece of namespace in there for you. And it's also going to put the name that you used when you were creating the program. It's going to put it there as the namespace. So we named our program if statement, and so the namespace is if statement. Now we can change these names if we wanted to, but in later videos we'll do that, but I don't want to get you confused, so we'll just keep everything as it is. Okay, I'm sure that you've wrote everything down or typed it in, and so I can end this video now. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if this was helpful for you, and give it a like and hit the notifications button so that YouTube knows that you would like to see any other videos that I create for you. Thank you. Enjoy your day.